To our amazing Cheating Tales Lab community, welcome. We appreciate you joining us for another story. We've prepared something special that we hope you'll enjoy. Let's begin this story. The chandeliers cast a warm glow across the Chicago Business Awards ballroom, their light reflecting off crystal glasses and polished cufflinks. Nicholas Knox adjusted his perfectly tailored Tom Ford suit, more comfortable in work boots and a hard hat than black tie attire. Still, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of a self-made man who'd built his construction empire from the ground up. Mr. Knox, a young reporter from the Tribune approached, notepad ready. Any comment on your wife's nomination? Allison's work speaks for itself, Nicholas replied with a measured smile, noting how the reporter's colleague whispered something and quickly averted his gaze. It was the third such odd interaction of the evening, but he dismissed it as pre-award jitters. At their assigned table, Nicholas found himself seated with Chicago's business elite. Richard Massey, founder of Massey Enterprises, offered a handshake that felt somehow apologetic. His son Thomas, the company's CEO, was conspicuously absent from his usual seat. Quite the turnout, Richard commented, studying his wine glass. Nicholas, perhaps we should. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC's voice boomed through the speakers. Please welcome our host for the evening, Senator Catherine Walsh. The senator took the stage, her political smile firmly in place. Tonight, we celebrate excellence in Chicago's business community. Our next award recognizes a woman who has revolutionized corporate finance. Nicholas felt pride swell in his chest. 15 years of marriage, and Allison still amazed him. They'd started with nothing, him working construction sites while she pursued her MBA at night. Now his Knox Construction handled major projects across 3 states, while she'd risen to CFO at Massey Enterprises. The Businesswoman of the Year award goes to Allison Knox, Chief Financial Officer of Massey Enterprises. Applause erupted as Allison rose gracefully from her seat at the adjacent table. Not their assigned one, Nicholas noted with slight confusion. Her red designer dress caught the light as she ascended the stage, accepting the crystal trophy with practiced elegance. Thank you, Senator Walsh. Allison's voice carried clearly through the ballroom. This award represents years of dedication, not just mine, but the entire team at Massey Enterprises. Nicholas smiled, remembering late nights discussing strategy at their kitchen table. But most importantly, Allison continued, her expression shifting subtly, I want to thank my rock, my best supportive work husband of 15 years, Thomas Massey. The room fell silent. Nicholas felt his world tilt sideways as Thomas emerged from the wings, striding across the stage with triumphant confidence. Honey, I couldn't do it without you. Allison purred into the microphone before Thomas pulled her into a passionate kiss. Nicholas moved without conscious thought, his footsteps echoing in the stunned silence as he approached the stage. What the hell is all this? The question cut through the tension like a blade. Allison pulled away from Thomas, her mask of sophistication dissolving into something ugly and foreign. You're such a pathetic, weak husband, Nicholas. Her words dripped with contempt. While you were playing with your little construction projects, Tommy and I built an empire. Face it, I make more money than you ever will. She turned on her heel, trophy in hand, leaving Nicholas standing alone in the spotlight. Thomas smirked, wrapping an arm around Allison's waist as they exited stage left. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Nicholas remained still, his expression carved from stone. Senator Walsh approached, concern evident on her face. Mr. Knox, I had no idea. Excuse me, Senator. His voice was quiet but firm. I believe I've had enough entertainment for one evening. As he walked through the parting crowd, he caught fragments of conversation. Been going on for months. Everyone knew except him. Poor man, so humiliating. Outside, the valet brought his Range Rover. Nicholas gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The drive home was a blur of city lights and racing thoughts. Their brownstones sat dark and silent, mocking the life he thought they'd built. Morning brought clarity and fury. Nicholas's phone buzzed incessantly. Reporters, business associates, concerned friends. He ignored them all, focusing instead on his laptop screen. Their joint accounts, empty. Investment portfolios, transferred. Even their shared safety deposit box had been cleared out the previous week. His private office at Knox Construction offered no refuge. A stern-faced IRS agent waited with his assistant, Rhonda, who couldn't quite meet his eyes. "Mr. Knox, we're initiating an audit of your company's finances for the past 5 years." Nicholas accepted the documents without comment, noting Rhonda's nervous fidgeting. Before he could address it, his brother Jay burst in, looking harried. "Nick, Jesus, I've been trying to reach you all morning." Jay ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "Look, there's something you need to know." "That you knew?" Nicholas's voice remained eerily calm. "How long, Jay?" His brother collapsed into a chair. 6 months. "Nick, I wanted to tell you, but Allison, she threatened to revoke my contracting licenses. Said she'd make sure Knox Construction never worked with Massey Enterprises again. And that was enough to betray your own brother? She has dirt on everyone. Nick, the way she and Thomas operated, it wasn't just an affair. They've been planning this for years." Nicholas leaned back, studying his brother's face. "Tell me everything." The story unfolded like a cheap tabloid drama. Their mutual friend Renee McCall, the attorney who'd handled Nicholas's contracts for years, had been providing his beach house for Allison and Thomas's rendezvous. Jay's wife Judith, always so proud of her social connections, had helped Allison hide assets through her network of wealthy friends. Even Rhonda, Jay added quietly, Allison offered her a position at Massey Enterprises, executive assistant to the CFO. Nicholas pressed the intercom. "Rhonda, could you join us?" His assistant entered, clearly fighting tears. "Mr. Knox, I'm so sorry. I never meant." "Sit down, Rhonda." Nicholas's tone was neither kind nor cruel. "I want you to tell me exactly what information Allison asked for and what she promised in return." An hour later, Nicholas sat alone in his office, processing everything he'd learned. The betrayal ran deeper than he'd imagined, spreading through his business and personal life like poison. His phone buzzed, a text from Thomas Massey. "Dinner at Gibson's, 8 p.m. Let's discuss this like businessmen." Nicholas smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Gibson's was where he'd first met Allison, back when she was a promising junior analyst and he was bidding on his first major project. How fitting. The steakhouse hummed with expensive conversation and the clink of fine china. Nicholas arrived precisely at 8, dressed in a sharp charcoal suit that spoke of power rather than wealth. Thomas waited at the bar, nursing a scotch. "Knox." Thomas raised his glass in mock salute. "Glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it." Nicholas ordered water, noting how it irked Thomas. "I assume Allison won't be joining us?" "She's meeting with the lawyers, drawing up a generous settlement offer." Thomas leaned forward, his perfect veneers gleaming. "Be smart, Knox. Take the deal. You're out of your league here." Nicholas allowed himself a small smile, one that made Thomas shift uncomfortably in his seat. "Interesting choice of words, Tommy. We'll see who's out of their league soon enough." He stood, leaving his water untouched. "Give Allison my congratulations on the award. She always did know how to put on a show." Later that night, Nicholas sat in his home office, surrounded by files and financial records. His phone rang. Dominic Daniels, the private investigator he'd hired that morning. "Mr. Knox? You're going to want to see this. I've got surveillance photos from Renee's beach house. Regular meetings, not just Thomas and Allison. Shell company executives, offshore banking representatives. Send everything to my secure email." Nicholas opened his laptop. "And Dominic? Keep digging." As dawn broke over Chicago's skyline, Nicholas Knox finally allowed himself to rest. The strategy was taking shape in his mind, clear as the architectural plans he'd built his company on. They thought him weak, a cuckolded husband too pathetic to fight back. They would learn otherwise. In his bedroom, he opened the safe hidden behind an abstract painting, one of Judith's overpriced recommendations. Inside lay documents he'd accumulated over years of business dealings, leverage he'd never thought he'd need. Photographs, bank statements, recorded conversations. Nicholas Knox had built his empire from nothing, understanding that in construction, the foundation matters more than the facade. While they'd been playing their game, he'd been building something too. Now it was time to watch their house of cards collapse. The morning sun glinted off Renee McCall's beach house windows as Dominic Daniels adjusted his telephoto lens. From his vantage point, he had a clear view of the weekly gathering: Thomas Massey's silver Mercedes, Allison's Range Rover, and 3 other luxury vehicles belonging to executives Nicholas Knox had identified as shell company operators. Dominic's phone buzzed. "What do you have for me?" "Mr. Knox, you'll want to see these photos." Dominic watched through his lens as Thomas handed thick envelopes to 2 men in expensive suits. "But there's something else. Been doing background on McCall's real estate dealings. Found some interesting connections to overseas accounts. Send everything to my office. And Dominic, make sure Mrs. McCall receives an anonymous package with select highlights." 3 days later, Naomi McCall stormed into her husband's downtown law office, throwing a manila envelope onto his desk. "Care to explain these, Renee?" The prominent attorney's face drained of color as photos spilled across his mahogany desk. Intimate gatherings at his beach house, financial documents showing questionable transactions, and evidence of his role in hiding Allison and Thomas's affair. "Naomi, I can explain. Save it for the SEC," she snapped, pulling more documents from her designer bag. "I've already spoken with them about your creative accounting at the Marina development." Renee's carefully constructed world crumbled within hours. By evening, his partners had called an emergency meeting. By midnight, he was calling Nicholas Knox. "What do you want?" Renee's voice cracked with desperation. "I'll tell you everything about their operation." Nicholas's response came cold and clear through the speaker. "You had your chance to do the right thing. Now you get to watch everything burn. Knox, please. I can help you. Like you helped Allison and Thomas destroy my marriage. Goodbye, Renee. Give my regards to Idaho." The next morning, Chicago's business community buzzed with news of Renee McCall's sudden retirement and relocation. Thomas Massey paced his office, phone pressed to his ear. "What do you mean he's gone? He knows everything about the shell companies." He turned to find Allison in his doorway, her expression dark. "Knox is behind this," she said. "Time to show him what happens when he plays in the big leagues." The attack came from all directions. Anonymous complaints flooded the licensing board about Knox construction. OSHA inspectors appeared at every job site. Major clients received concern calls about project delays and safety violations. Wesley Sharp, Nicholas's project manager of 12 years, watched the third surprise inspection that week with growing anger. Another complaint: "Mr. Knox, they're trying to shut us down." Nicholas studied the latest report. "How are the crews holding up?" "Loyal to the bone. They know what this is about." Wesley's weathered face hardened. "Though Massey's people tried to change that. Offered me 6 figures to accidentally delay the Riverside project." Nicholas raised an eyebrow. "And?" Wesley pulled out his phone, playing a recorded conversation. Thomas Massey's voice filled the office. "Just one missed deadline, Mr. Sharp. Knox Construction loses its performance bond. We step in with Massey Development. Everyone wins." "Got it all on tape," Wesley said proudly. "Nobody breaks up this family." Across town, Judith Knox Harrison sipped champagne in her Gold Coast penthouse, plotting damage control. The socialite had built her reputation on managing delicate situations, but Nicholas's systematic dismantling of Renee McCall threatened everything. She arranged a dinner at Gibson's, choosing a private booth where Chicago's elite handled their most sensitive negotiations. Nicholas arrived exactly on time, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably cost more than the ones he used to wear. Success, Judith noted, suited her brother-in-law. "Be reasonable," she urged, studying his impassive expression. "Allison's offering a generous settlement. Think about the family." Nicholas took a measured sip of water. "Family? Like when you helped her hide assets through your art gallery connections?" "That was business." Speaking of business, Nicholas slid a folder across the table. "How's Edwin's gallery doing?" "Must be challenging, balancing all those international art purchases with Chicago's money laundering laws." Judith's perfectly manicured hand trembled as she opened the folder. "Where did you get these?" "The same place I got proof of Jay's involvement in procurement fraud." Nicholas stood, adjusting his cuffs. "You chose sides, Judith. Now you get to live with the consequences." The family dinner a week later felt like a wake. Jay Knox sat at his usual place, but his usual confidence had vanished. His largest clients had received detailed documentation of his kickback scheme that morning. How could you? Nicholas's voice cut through the tense silence. Not just the betrayal, but feeding information to Thomas while pretending to support me. Nick, please, save it. Nicholas placed a USB drive next to Jay's plate. That contains everything I have on your dealings. The authorities receive copies tomorrow unless you tell me everything you know about their operation. Every shell company, every hidden account. Jay's face crumpled. They'll destroy me. No, little brother. You did that yourself. The information Jay provided filled in the final pieces. Nicholas now had a complete picture of Thomas and Allison's elaborate financial scheme, and more importantly, their vulnerabilities. At his office, Nicholas reviewed the intelligence with Dominic. They're leveraged through shell companies, using stolen corporate funds to maintain the illusion of success. Like a house of cards, Dominic observed. Exactly. And we're about to pull out the bottom row. Thomas continued his campaign against Knox Construction, unaware of the trap closing around him. Each OSHA inspection found Nicholas's sites exceeding safety requirements. Every complaint backfired as clients witnessed Knox's professional handling of the harassment. Allison grew increasingly frustrated. Nothing works. His reputation is actually improving. Patience, darling. Thomas kissed her neck, not noticing her slight flinch. He'll break eventually. Everyone does. But Nicholas Knox didn't break. At charity galas and business functions, he appeared maddeningly unaffected by their public displays of affection. His company continued securing major contracts. Worse, his calm confidence seemed to be attracting supporters. Did you see the way the mayor's wife snubbed me? Allison complained after one event. And the Johnson account. They're considering switching their commercial development to Knox Construction. Thomas slammed his glass down. Then we'll have to hit harder. Call your contact at the Tribune. It's time for some creative journalism about Knox's business practices. But before they could launch their media attack, the ground shifted. Renee McCall's disgrace had created cracks in their foundation. Judith's art gallery faced a surprise audit. Jay Knox's clients were deserting him. Their carefully constructed network of allies was unraveling. Nicholas watched it all from his office, overlooking the Chicago River, Wesley Sharp at his side reviewing project updates. They're getting desperate, Wesley noted. Heard they tried to bribe Rodriguez on the hospital project. He recorded everything, just like I did. Nicholas nodded. Loyalty matters, Wes. That's something they never understood. Speaking of loyalty, Wesley hesitated. Rhonda asked to come back. Said she made a mistake listening to Mrs. Knox. To Allison. What do you think? She's a good assistant. And she chose to warn us about their media plans instead of taking their offer. Nicholas considered this. Set up a meeting. Everyone deserves a chance to choose the right side. The battle had evolved beyond personal betrayal into a war of attrition. Each week brought new attacks from Thomas and Allison, each one anticipated and deflected. Nicholas's countermoves were subtle but devastating. Key investors growing wary, banking relationships strained, whispers of regulatory scrutiny. He's playing a longer game than we thought, Thomas admitted during a late-night strategy session. Maybe we should consider a more aggressive settlement offer. Allison's laugh held the edge of hysteria. It's too late for that. Don't you see? He's not interested in money. He wants to destroy us. Then we'll destroy him first. But their next move never came. Nicholas had already laid the groundwork for Act 3, though they didn't know it yet. As Thomas prepared for his upcoming investor conference, Nicholas's team was quietly acquiring debt from their shell companies through untraceable entities. The stage was set for the final act. Nicholas sat in his office, reviewing the evidence one last time. Photos from Renee's beach house. Banking records from Judith's gallery. Jay's procurement documents. Recordings from Wesley and other loyal employees. All the pieces assembled into a devastating picture of corporate fraud and personal betrayal. His phone buzzed, Dominic with one last update. They're planning something big for the investor conference. Want me to intervene? No. Nicholas smiled. Let them make their move. Everything's ready on our end? All set. Just waiting for your signal. Nicholas ended the call. walking to his window to watch the sunset paint Chicago's skyline in shades of gold and blood red. Tomorrow would change everything. But tonight, he allowed himself a moment to appreciate the poetry of it all. They thought they were destroying him. Instead, they'd given him the weapon of his revenge, their own arrogance. The marble lobby of Chicago's financial district tower buzzed with anticipation. Investors and media gathered for Massey Enterprises' annual conference, where Thomas Massey would present their latest projections. Security guards checked credentials while Thomas rehearsed his speech in the executive suite above. The numbers look perfect, Allison assured him, adjusting his tie. Stop fidgeting. Knox has been too quiet lately. Thomas shrugged off her hands. It makes me nervous. He's finished. The OSHA investigations, the licensing complaints. He's probably drowning in legal fees. Neither noticed the discreet movement of suited figures through the building's secondary entrances, or the methodical way Nicholas's legal team positioned themselves in predetermined locations. In his downtown office, Nicholas reviewed final preparations with Dominic Daniels. Months of investigation had revealed the full scope of Thomas and Allison's scheme. Shell companies layered within shell companies, corporate funds siphoned through offshore accounts, all hidden behind a facade of legitimate business. Confirmation from our Hong Kong contact, Dominic reported. The last debt purchase is complete. We now control financial obligations for all their major shell companies. Nicholas nodded. And the SEC? Ready to move on your signal. FBI too. Then it's time. Nicholas stood, straightening his jacket. Let's go watch the show. The conference room filled quickly. Thomas took the stage to enthusiastic applause, his trademark confidence on full display. Behind him, presentation slides showed aggressive growth projections and ambitious expansion plans. Ladies and gentlemen, Thomas began, Massey Enterprises stands at the threshold of our most successful year yet. Our innovative financing strategies. A subtle ripple of movement caught his attention. Men in dark suits were quietly entering through all three doors. In the back row, Nicholas Knox sat down, opened his laptop, and pressed a single key. Across Chicago, servers hummed as pre-programmed legal filings activated. Claims against every shell company in Thomas and Allison's network hit the system simultaneously. Emergency alerts began flooding investors' phones. Thomas faltered mid-sentence as his own phone buzzed. Then others started ringing throughout the room. The carefully orchestrated presentation dissolved into confused murmuring. If I could have everyone's attention, Nicholas's voice cut through the chaos. He stood, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the growing panic. You might want to see the real numbers behind those projections. The main screen switched to a detailed flowchart of shell companies, highlighted paths showing how corporate funds had been systematically looted. Supporting documentation appeared, bank transfers, forged authorizations, offshore account details. This is outrageous. Thomas sputtered. Security. Remove him? I wouldn't. Nicholas replied evenly. The FBI agents by the doors might object. As if on cue, the suits revealed their badges. Thomas's face drained of color. You'll also find, Nicholas continued, addressing the shocked investors, that all outstanding debts for these shell companies have been acquired by Knox Holdings. As the primary creditor, I'm calling them due. Immediately, the room erupted. Thomas lunged for the podium microphone, but his own security chief stepped in his way. Sir, the guard said quietly, I've been instructed to escort you to the federal agents. Across town, Allison arrived at her office to find FBI agents boxing files. Her executive assistant watched wide-eyed as they methodically documented everything. What is the meaning of this? Allison demanded, reaching for her phone. I wouldn't bother trying the emergency accounts. Nicholas's voice came from her office doorway. They've been frozen. Legal says hello, by the way. Allison's perfectly composed facade cracked. You can't do this. I built this company. No. Nicholas cut her off. You stole from this company. There's a difference. Ask your friend Renee McCall. Oh wait, he's practicing law in Idaho now. She lunged for her computer, but an FBI agent was already disconnecting it. This is harassment. I'll sue. With what money? Nicholas examined his cufflinks. Your personal accounts are frozen too. Even the ones Judith helped you hide through the art gallery. Speaking of which, how is my dear sister-in-law enjoying her husband's divorce filing? Allison's knees buckled. She grabbed her desk for support, designer heels unsteady on the marble floor. How did you figure it all out? You might ask Jay, but he's a bit busy with his own legal troubles right now. Nicholas's smile held no warmth. Family loyalty is such a fragile thing, isn't it? The emergency board meeting that afternoon felt more like a funeral. Thomas and Allison faced hostile investors across the mahogany conference table while Nicholas sat quietly in the back, watching his trap close completely. These allegations are ridiculous, Thomas insisted. Our books are clean. Then explain these. A major shareholder threw down a stack of documents. Shell companies? Offshore accounts? My God. You were even stealing from the pension fund. It's not stealing, Allison interjected. We were reinvesting. Through your private accounts? Another investor stood, face red with fury. I've seen the transfers. If I may, Nicholas spoke for the first time. Perhaps Mrs. Knox would like to explain these recordings? The room fell silent as Allison's voice filled the air, giving explicit instructions to move corporate funds through various shell companies. Each recording was time-stamped, documented, damning. That's taken out of context, she snarled. Really? Nicholas raised an eyebrow. Should we ask your assistant? The one you tried to bribe? Or perhaps Mr. Sharp from my company, who recorded your husband's attempted sabotage? Thomas slumped in his chair, the reality of their situation finally sinking in. Their lawyers huddled in whispered consultation, faces grim. The arraignment 2 weeks later drew media from across the country. The courthouse steps swarmed with reporters as Thomas and Allison arrived separately, their designer wardrobes replaced by conservative business attire. Inside, their legal team presented a last-minute deal. Our clients are willing to surrender additional assets for reduced charges, the lead attorney announced. The prosecutor looked to Nicholas, who stood to address the court. In his hand, he held a thin file, the final piece of evidence he'd been saving. Your Honor, before considering any deals, you should see this. He handed over documentation of their most recent attempted fund transfers. Even after the arrests, they tried to hide assets. There's no remorse, no redemption, only calculation. The judge's expression hardened as she reviewed the evidence. Thomas's swagger vanished completely. Allison's perfectly manicured hands trembled. The court rejects the proposed deal, the judge declared. This level of corporate fraud demands full prosecution. As court officers led them away, Allison turned back. You destroyed everything we built. Nicholas met her gaze steadily. No, he replied, voice carrying in the hushed courtroom. You did that when you chose betrayal over loyalty. I just made sure everyone saw who you really are. The media circus eventually died down. Chicago's business community gradually recovered from the scandal, though certain names remained toxic in boardrooms across the city. Nicholas's construction company expanded, absorbing several of Thomas's failed investments at fire sale prices. Wesley Sharp, promoted to senior management, oversaw the integration of new projects with loyal efficiency. Renee McCall's law license found a new home in Idaho, his Chicago connections worthless in a small-town practice. Judith's husband filed for divorce after the art gallery scandal, her carefully cultivated social position crumbling like a house of cards. Jay's business declared bankruptcy, his clients fleeing en masse after the procurement fraud revelations. Family gatherings became notably smaller, though notably more honest. Rhonda, who'd chosen loyalty over Allison's bribe, found her career flourishing as Nicholas's executive assistant. When reporters requested interviews about the scandal, she became the company's unofficial spokesperson. Mr. Knox never wanted revenge, she told them, seated in the office where she'd once betrayed him. He wanted justice. There's a difference. Nicholas himself declined all interviews, letting the court's verdicts speak for themselves. His focus remained where it had always been, building things meant to last, whether buildings or relationships. The lesson echoed through Chicago's business community. Betrayal carries a price, and Nicholas Knox made sure everyone paid in full. Epilogue, 2 years later. The gates of the Federal Correctional Institution in Pekin, Illinois loomed before Allison Knox, now inmate number 47291. Gone were the Louboutin heels and Chanel suits, replaced by standard-issue khaki uniforms. Her once perfect manicure had grown out, and her carefully highlighted hair showed dark roots beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Mail call, Knox. A guard tossed an envelope through the cell door slot. Another rejection. Her third appeal denied. 15 years with no possibility of parole for corporate fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. The judge had been particularly harsh after Nicholas's evidence revealed her attempts to hide assets even after the arrest. 2 cells down, her former assistant, one of the lower-level employees she tried to blame, served a reduced 3-year sentence in exchange for cooperation. The woman never acknowledged Allison's existence, a daily reminder of her fall from grace. Across the state at the minimum security men's facility, Thomas Massey stared at his own reflection in a steel mirror. 12 years, the judge had ruled. His father Richard had died 6 months into his sentence, the family name in ruins. Massey Enterprises, the company his grandfather built, had been dissolved, its legitimate assets sold off to cover investor lawsuits. Visitor for Massey, a guard announced. Thomas shuffled to the visiting area, orange jumpsuit hanging loose on his frame. His mother sat behind the plexiglass, her once proud posture bent with shame. The house sold, she reported flatly. Barely covered the legal fees. I'm moving in with your sister in Milwaukee. Thomas pressed his hand against the glass. Mom, I'm sorry. She stood, gathering her designer bag, one of the few remnants of their former life. So am I, Thomas. So am I. Meanwhile, Nicholas Knox's corner office overlooked a changed Chicago skyline. Knox Construction's new headquarters occupied the building that once housed Massey Enterprises executive suites. The company had expanded across 5 states, its reputation for integrity attracting clients who'd learned harsh lessons about trusting flashy promises over solid foundations. Wesley Sharp, now Chief Operations Officer, entered with the latest project reports. Hospital wings ahead of schedule. That new sustainable design you implemented is saving them a fortune in energy costs. Nicholas nodded, studying the blueprints. How's the crew integration going? Smooth as silk. Those boys from the old Massey sites? They're grateful for steady work with a straight shooter. Wesley grinned. Speaking of straight shooters, Rhonda's got the quarterly numbers ready. Rhonda Martinez, formerly just Rhonda, had proven her worth 100 times over since choosing loyalty over Allison's bribe. As project management director, she oversaw the company's expansion with meticulous attention to detail. Her office, once Allison's private domain, now hummed with productive energy. The Justice Department called again, Rhonda reported, entering with a stack of files. They want you to consult on another corporate fraud case. Something about your unique perspective. Nicholas smiled slightly. Tell them I'll consider it. How's the foundation project coming? The Knox Integrity Foundation, funded by recovered assets from the Massey scandal, provided scholarships for construction management students and supported whistleblower protection programs. It was Nicholas's way of turning betrayal's poison into something productive. Across town, in a modest Idaho law office, Renee McCall reviewed small claims documents. His Chicago law license remained suspended, his reputation irreparable. Divorce had cost him half of what he had left after the scandal. Naomi had relocated to California with their children, his visitation rights limited by court order. His phone buzzed, another rejection from a major law firm. Even with his reduced sentence for cooperation, no respectable practice would touch him. He'd become a cautionary tale in legal ethics courses. Mr. McCall? His assistant poked her head in. Your 2 o'clock is here. Disputed fence line case. From corporate law to property disputes. From beach house parties to shared office space above a diner. From designer suits to off-the-rack blazers with shiny elbows. Renee straightened his drugstore reading glasses and forced a smile. In Chicago's Gold Coast, Judith Harrison, she'd reverted to her maiden name, hosted intimate dinner parties instead of grand galas. Her social circle had contracted dramatically after Edwin's art gallery scandal and subsequent divorce. The money laundering investigation had cost them everything, including their reputation. More wine, dear, she offered her remaining friend, a similarly disgraced socialite. Did you see the business section? Her friend asked cautiously. Knox Construction's expanding again. They're building that new tech campus downtown. Judith's hand trembled slightly as she poured. Her own financial situation had stabilized at comfortable rather than wealthy after the divorce settlement, but her influence in Chicago society was gone. Young socialites who once begged for her mentorship now crossed the street to avoid her. Her brother Jay had fared worse. After his construction company's bankruptcy, he'd relocated to Phoenix, starting over as a small-time contractor. His involvement in procurement fraud had made him radioactive in Chicago's business community. Monthly alimony payments to his ex-wife kept him in a one-bedroom apartment despite his attempts to rebuild. Jay's phone lit up with a news alert. Knox Construction wins Sustainable Building Award. He quickly closed it, the familiar mix of shame and regret souring his coffee. The scandal's ripples continued spreading. Thomas and Allison's former social circle had scattered, everyone desperate to distance themselves from the taint of association. Their favorite restaurants hosted new power players at their preferred tables. Their country club memberships had been quietly revoked. In prison, Allison received occasional updates from her elderly aunt, the only family member still in contact. Her parents had retired to Florida, changing their phone number. Her sister had asked her to stop writing. Former friends returned her letters unopened. Her lawyer, one of the few willing to handle her appeals, was brutally honest. The evidence was overwhelming. Knox's documentation was flawless. Even if you serve the minimum sentence, your professional licenses are permanently revoked. The restitution payments will take everything you earn for the rest of your life. Allison spent her days in the prison library, reading business magazines that chronicled Knox Construction's continued success. Every article felt like a twist of the knife, especially the small mentions of Rhonda's promotion to project management director, the position she'd once tried to bribe her with. Thomas occupied his time teaching basic business classes to fellow inmates, a cruel parody of his former corporate presentations. His cellmate, in for tax evasion, actually recognized him from the scandal. "Man, Knox played you like a chess master," the cellmate commented. "Had all the pieces in place before you even knew you were in the game." The observation haunted Thomas. Every move they'd made, every attack they'd launched, had somehow played into Nicholas's strategy. He'd turned their own weapons against them, their arrogance, their greed, their assumption that he'd roll over and accept defeat. Back in Chicago, Nicholas left his office early to meet Dominic Daniels for their monthly dinner. The private investigator had parlayed his work on the Massey case into a thriving practice specializing in corporate fraud. "Got something you might be interested in," Dominic mentioned over steaks at Gibson's. "Remember that offshore account Allison tried to access after her arrest? Found some interesting connections to other cases." Nicholas shook his head. "Send it to the Justice Department. I'm done with that chapter." Speaking of chapters, heard from a publisher lately? They're still dying for your story. Let them wonder. Nicholas sipped his water. Success is the best revenge, and silence drives them crazy. He'd received countless offers, books, movies, interviews, all promising to tell the real story of Chicago's most spectacular corporate takedown. Nicholas declined them all, letting the court transcripts and journalism archives tell the tale. His new penthouse offered sweeping views of Lake Michigan, though he spent more time at construction sites than at home. The building's doorman still had standing instructions to return any messages or packages from Allison, Thomas, or their associates. The only reminder he kept of that time was a framed Chicago Business Award program, dated the night of Allison's public betrayal. It sat on his office wall, not as a wound but as a lesson. Trust must be earned, loyalty must be proven, and justice may take time but arrives inevitably. Rhonda noticed him studying it one morning. "Still hard to believe how it all played out," she observed. "Not really," Nicholas replied. "They thought they were writing a story of triumph over the little construction guy. Never realized they were just characters in a different story entirely." His phone buzzed, the mayor's office, wanting to discuss a major infrastructure project. Nicholas gathered his files, nodding to the program on the wall. "Happy ending optional," he told Rhonda. "Justice mandatory." In their separate prison cells, Thomas and Allison received their daily reminders of this truth. Every meal, every count, every restricted visit hammered home the lesson they'd learned too late. Betrayal carries a price, and Nicholas Knox had made sure they paid in full. Their empire had crumbled. Their reputations were destroyed. Their futures were confined to concrete walls and endless regret. Meanwhile, the man they tried to destroy thrived, his success built on the foundation they'd foolishly thought was weakness: integrity. As Chicago's business community liked to say, there were two ways to learn about consequences: observation or experience. Thomas and Allison had chosen experience, and Nicholas had ensured it was an education they'd never forget. The city skyline continued evolving, Knox Construction's projects adding new dimensions to old perspectives. Each building stood as a testament to what Nicholas had always known. Real power isn't in knocking things down, but in building something that lasts. In the end, that was the true price of betrayal. Watching from behind bars as the future moved forward without them, shaped by the man they'd mistaken for an easy target. They'd gambled everything on the assumption that Nicholas Knox would break. Instead, he'd rebuilt himself stronger, turned their weapons into his tools, and transformed their betrayal into his triumph. It wasn't just revenge, it was reconstruction. And in Chicago's business circles, that made all the difference.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.